This joint is jumping, it's really jumping. Come in, cats, and check your hats. I mean, this joint is jumping. Again, it's thumping. All the neighbors are knocking. This spot is more than hot. I mean, this joint is jumping. Check your weapons at the door. There's lots of gin in the kitchen. Look at that guy that just came in here. Look at the way he's switching. Oh, the roof is rocking. All the neighbors are knocking. I got the bail if we go to jail on me. Yeah, this joint is jumping. Oh, come in, cats, and check your hats. I mean, this joint is jumping. Now, don't anybody give your right name. Never, 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 never. Yeah.
Our family, all the Murata family played. Some by ear, some became very good musicians. So when they came to California, my dad took a liking to the accordion, especially when they came out with not the button accordion, but with the accordion with the piano keys. My dad was pretty intrigued with that, so he picked one up and just fiddled with it. And before you knew it, he was doing Italian weddings, he's doing Italian picnics, and playing along the beach here at Monterey, down where the breakwater is here. In the 30s and 31s now, they came with these purse-seiners that you see some of them around here now. Now, every time they'd have one of these boats built, they'd come down, and on Sunday, they'd park here, and we'd get the priest and we'd bless this boat so that it makes a lot of money, right? And we get the Murata family, we're sitting in the back, we're playing music, and from 1 o'clock till 5 in the afternoon, we're going around the bay honking the horns and giving people free rides on this boat. The whole town, when the Murata family came to Monterey, just embraced our family because they brought back music from the old country.
And the most exciting part of the festival was having the music and playing the ethnic music and having the Tarantella dancers up there and having Ree Brunel come up there and sing the song that is so familiar.
The Santa Rosalia Festival together, and that's all Italian music. And that's what we really shine, is on Italian music.
I'm taking classical piano lessons from 6 years old till about 11 or 12, and I'm taking my dad's beautiful accordion that he just had made with his name on it, with all the pearls on it, and I'm taking it out and I'm playing it, you know. And I had my mother swear to secrecy that because, he'd kill me if I touched that beautiful accordion, you know. And he had come home early one day and he caught me with this accordion. Didn't say a word to me. I put it back in the case and I went out and played baseball with the kids in the sandlot next to our house. A week later, I came home from school around 3:30, and there's an old big Packard car parked in front of our house, and I couldn't imagine why in our neighborhood there'd be a Packard car. And I went in the house, and in the living room, there's about 20 different accordions, various sizes. And my dad looked at me and says, "Take your pick." I says, "Really?" He says, "Yes." I said, "Well, I'd like to have yours." And he says, "You got it." My dad gave me his accordion, which was way too big for me. And from then on, he never touched it.
Mrs. Favazza, please come up. She caught me smoking in the back room, in the barn with her son. And she spanked me when I was 9 years old.
I was the youngest musician in the Musicians Union. I was invited to join the Musicians Union at age 12. I've been in the Musicians Union over 65 years. I quit high school after my year and a half, went to LA and worked radio with some top performers down there. And I was pretty hot. I was pretty good as a kid. In them days, you didn't find too many accordion players that could play Dizzy Fingers, Nola, and Flight of the Bumblebee, and those kind of things. There weren't too many in the 30s that could do that. So I was a rare commodity. In the meantime, while I'm down there, I'm studying from an accordionist teacher by the name of Syl Pryor, and I learned a lot of humility there by going to his studio once a week. And as hot shot as I was, he'd show me, if you're going to do it, this is the way it should be done, you know?
He loves music to this day. He just, he'll get through playing a 3-4 hour job and he'll go out and sit in with guys. He just loves music, He just loves to play. He plays with a lot of feel, plays with a lot of heart.
Mike Murata can play some awesome jazz accordion. He is bad, and he's been bad for a long time.
Our piano player didn't show up. And we panicked and we called Mike, and he came down to play. He came in and he just played from his heart with that microphone up and played like I have never heard. And I keep telling him that. I says, Mike, that was the one time I can say, man, you just did it.
Boy, the seal kept time with me. Now, talking about who needs a brook? Come on, keep in time, fella.
Tell me, when will you be mine? Leave me quiet, we can share a love divine. Please don't make me wait again. Family was very, very Italian. My dad was a fisherman. I worked in the fishing industry, as did my mother, until I was old enough to open my mouth and out came song. My dad loved to sing, and he taught me a lot of the old Italian songs. And my brother Benny, who a lot of people will remember, Benny Bruno, was a wonderful musician. Let me show you the way to a love beyond compare. I can't wait a moment more. I grew up with John, went to school with John, and we worked a long time and a lot together. We're still working together. He's a great one. I guess it was 55 years ago. I sang on the stage of the old State Theater downtown in Monterey, and I won the contest. Got up on the stage, no fear, as they say, and sang, "A playmate, come out and play with me." And that was the beginning. That's where it started. Didn't know I had it until I opened my mouth. Say it's me that you'll adore. And my darling, tell me when. Darling, tell me when. Tell me. Dimmi quando.
I read the newspaper in the hotel, and it said that Joe Benuti was playing at Michael's Pub. Now, I've never been out of Monterey. So I called Michael's Pub. They gave me his phone number at the hotel where he was staying. And I called him up, and he says, "John, you in New York?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "You got your clarinet?" I said, "Oh, I carry it with me all the time." He says, "Come on down tonight. I want you to sit in with me." I said, "Me in New York? Don't worry about it. That's the way you talk. Don't worry about it." So I did. I took my wife and my son. My mother-in-law was with us. My clarinet. We had dinner. I drank a bottle of wine because I was so nervous. And he gets up and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen," he says, "you've all heard of the Benny Goodman of the East Coast." He says, "Tonight we're honored to have the Benny Goodman of the West Coast with us, Mr. John Cattleman." And everybody applauds, So I got up, I brought my horn up, and he said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Sweet Georgia Brown." So we started out, he took the first course, and then he let me go. I took about 7 courses of Sweet Georgia Brown with my eyes closed. And then when I got through, I opened my eyes. People were standing on the chairs, on top of the tables. I mean, applauding and applauding like I'd never heard in my life. I started to cry out. So I grabbed Joe and I kissed him right on the lips. I said, Joe, if I die right now, I'll be the happiest man in the world.
How about a round of applause for my wonderful Mike Murata and his boys have been up in this heat all day long playing for your entertainment. Mr. Mike Murata and the boys. Amore, scusami. Arrivederci, amore, scusami. È capita che lasciandoli io soffrirò. Amore, baciami. Arrivederci, amore, kiss me. Remember when we part, you'll have my heart. I love you so. It was just a slight flirtation. That was all it was to be. How could I know this fascination would turn to love for you and me? How to tell you of my heart. I snuck out the bedroom window. They had an army limousine waiting for me and went to sing at the officers club. And I sang and danced in those days. So.
Why did you have to sneak out the bedroom window?
Because my parents were Italian and girls didn't do that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
Italian girls didn't do that. First time they saw me perform on TV, coming out of San Francisco, I think it was Channel 5, with a group. And from that point on, that's a my gal.
I love music, and music, has always, in a sense, been my golf game. I can literally go on a job, and for 4 hours, I'm in another dimension.
Would turn to love for you and me. How to tell you of my heart. How to tell you I'm not free. How can I bear to see your heart break? To see your heart break over me. 3-4 years ago, I took a cruise that I went back to my roots. It was wonderful. Went back to, I went to Rome, I went to Florence. Most of all, I passed through the Straits of Messina and saw my father's homeland, Sicily. I stood out on the deck of the ship and cried and cried. Tears were coming for no reason. I could see the hillsides and the beautiful boats out on the water fishing. It was magnificent and a very wonderful homecoming for me through my dad's eyes. I love you so. I love you so.
He was born and raised in Monterey, and we grew side by side. And her first little job was at one of my nightclubs called a show bar that I had when I got out of the Army in '46. And she had a little trio, and she sang, and she played stand-up drums. And she was cute as a bug's ear, and very good singer.
I love that man. I love the man deeply. He is a great inspiration to me. Papa Mike is probably one of the greatest accordionists in the world, and the one with the biggest heart and body. Hello.
Mike Murata had a clarinet player at the lodge at Pebble Beach that I guess left the band, and he asked me if I wanted to play there. So I just started playing with Mike every Saturday night at the lodge in Pebble Beach, and we were there for 24 years.
Johnny and I went all through grammar school together, went through high school together. We went to MPC together. We've always been real close, and to this day, we play often together.
Frankie Noble, who's that? Frankie and I went to school together, all through grammar school, high school. In fact, I still consider Frankie my best friend.
These were good, solid family boys. There was no horsing around. They understood the role of the student and the teacher. And I remember Frank Novo, in order to kind of keep him jacked up a little bit, we got him a strap and a drum, and each morning he would go out and play a roll while they raised the flag at Thomas Larkin School. And you know, this kid did that for 2 or 3 years. Who knows what that did to his life?
I remember Mr. Buffalo telling me, he says, "Frank, would you like to play on a real drum?" I says, "A real drum?" And he said, "Yes. If you come to school at 7 o'clock in the morning, you can play a roll while the American flag is being raised." And that was my first experience on a real drum.
When I was younger, I had a real good ear, and I wasn't learning to read music. I was playing mostly by ear, piano. The teacher would give me a lesson, you know, and I'd watch his hands and listen. Go home and play it over a couple of times. Don't touch the piano again the rest of the week. Go back, play the lesson. So my mother was the one who had a tin ear. She didn't know anything, couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. She went with me one time after taking lessons for 2 years, and she had bought a piano and everything. And she told the teacher, "My son isn't learning to read the notes." And the teacher at the time said, "Oh no, your son is one of my top students of 45 students that I have." So my mother says, "Well, you stop him in the middle of his lesson this time and ask him where he is on the music." So he did, and I didn't know. I got all red in the face and everything, embarrassed. And I said, "I didn't know, I don't know." So then he refused to teach me anymore. He says, "Get him out of here. Get your kid out of here."
My mother gave me a few piano lessons down the street with a lady who played piano. And she had boys about my age, and so I had to go down there and practice. We didn't have any piano. But I'd go down and practice and play marbles with the boys. And I didn't do much practicing. I really didn't like the piano. And I always wanted something I could blow. So eventually my mother brought home a saxophone, and she was a natural psychiatrist. And she said she bought this for herself, and she'd already made arrangements to take the lessons, and that she was going to have it and play it, and it was a brand new, beautiful looking instrument. And I just begged and begged for the thing, and she let me beg for a week or so. And finally she said she'd made arrangements to take the lessons, and she guessed it'd be just as well maybe if I went and took the lessons, then I could teach her. Even though I could read the music, I could do anything the men could do. But they never got stuck so bad they would use a woman in a band, a large band. This one fellow, he wanted me to play in his orchestra. And so he said, at that time they had the boyish bob, and you cut your hair short. You know, lots of people did to be in style. Well, he told me, he said, if you just cut your hair and get a tux, we'll use you all the time. So I did. Saw an ad in the paper wanting a woman saxophone player, and I thought, that sounds interesting. So I answered it, and I did an audition for her, and she wanted me right away. And it's Juanita Connor's band, and it's a very well-known, wonderful band, and she had arrangements by Georgie Stoll, who did a lot of the arranging in Hollywood. We always had beautiful costumes, and she was very fussy about them, very fussy about our hair. And we all had to have hose exactly alike and get them at the same place and had the same shade and everything. Then I played with them quite a while, and then there was a band came through town, and I interviewed him because I was anxious to see the country. I thought I'm on the loose, and I guess as a kid I was always running away, and when I grew up I still had the end to go around and see everything.
In the European tradition, you have the music of the concert hall and the music of the street, and never the two shall meet. And also you had the music of the church that should not be taken out of the church. So you had church music and concert hall music, including opera and symphony and ballet and all of that, and the music of the street. Now in America, that fine line just never was drawn. The church lopped on to music as a really handy way to make its message look effective. Yeah. I mean, it's great for a service to have this wonderful music. So early papal decrees about using modes certainly limited how music was perceived. There was a bunch of modes used by the church that were tuned so that you couldn't even play them on a keyboard, that were all outlawed early on. And so that had an effect on music. Some of these modes were considered pagan or lascivious. Banjo music, which was played in the so-called minstrel shows, actually was an African instrument that had come over and became the banjo. So very early on, the rhythms of the banjo started having an effect on the rhythms of how the piano player played with his right hand. In minstrel music, in banjo music, the syncopations set up by the banjo player are really intricate. And it's really the 5 fingers, which finger picks which note when, creates accents. It's a flowing stream of 16th notes. But which ones are accented creates the syncopation. And they'd get this wonderful thing going. And the early ragtime piano players heard that, and they took that, and they created, this kind of... They have the accented notes off the beat, and that comes from early banjo music. The rag by way of the banjo music, you have the march music, which sort of gave the form of the pop song, really, the shape of what a song would be. It's got an intro, and it's got a verse, and then it's sort of got a chorus that you keep returning to. You had the influence of the impressionistic music from France, and then, of course, the blues were coming along in another level, but still, there was even blues and ragtime, so it was creeping in. Scott Joplin loved that. Which is just a blues pattern. So now we come up to the 20th century. Guess what's happening in France about this time? Impressionistic music with Debussy. And if you know Debussy at all, suddenly you've got... piano bar, folks, Very high-class piano bar, but it's piano bar, right? Yeah. Can I have my gin and tonic, please? Then he'd throw in chords like... He was the first one to do that. You ask any jazz piano player, well, where do you get these ruptured 13th kind of chords, where you pile up sonority on top of each other? Claude Debussy. These jazz musicians were listening to everything. They don't just listen to jazz. So that influence was very strong on our modern, Duke Ellington, he'd go, hey, I like Debussy, man, listen to those chords. And listen to Ravel, because he did the same thing later. Then one of the truly wonderful things that happened in the altering of the rhythm was they went from a very stiff kind of all the music on a turn of the century was like a little machine. It was very cute and quaint. And it went to it started swinging.
I was born in Hope, Arkansas in 1924. And when I was 18 months old, I stuck my hand in a lawnmower when the adults weren't looking and cut these 2 fingers off. And this one was sewed back on, and I know it didn't work very good. And so when I was about 5 years old, my mother started making me take piano lessons so that I wouldn't feel any more handicapped. And so for 10 years, I had to practice the piano an hour before and after school, and I hated her for it, but luckily, she knows before she passed on, she knows how I appreciate what she did. I played the tuba in the high school band. I went out for football and was in the second team, and every time after the football game, we'd take a shower and clean up and go out, and the girls were with somebody in the band already. They'd been sitting with them up in the audience. So I said, well, I want to be in the band. In World War II, and I played the piano and the tuba in that band, but my favorite musician in there was the string bass player, Glenn Hudson. And he was such an influence on me that I wanted to play the bass when I got out, and that's what I did. I want to tell this story. I got a job at the Aladdin Hotel, and in the basement there was a band rehearsing. Jesse Price and a 20-year-old Charlie Parker that we know as Yardbird now was the alto saxophone player, and as I would walk through there and listen to those rehearsals, having been interested in music already, I heard Charlie Parker and those guys, and I said, well, that's what I want to do. Might be the only free choice I ever made. I said, that's what I want to do, is be good enough to play with those guys. So that's the story of my life now. Is that enough for this interview?
That would be more toward the European taste. And if you take the same thing, the same song, that was, by the way, is one of the intros I used to my Funny Valentine. If you were to take the same thing and same chord structure and build the chords in such a way, Ellington, I was talking to him in Nedick's at 145th and St. Nicholas in New York, and I asked him, about the things, the musical things, how you get there. So the conversation ended up, and he asked the question, do you want to be a musician or do you want to play? I said, I want to play. He said, in practice. If you want to be a musician, go to school. Both continents, South and North America, if you listen to the music from Brazil straight up through Mexico, you hear that influence, that African influence coming. So it has, this is the one entity of African culture that has permeated every culture that there is. I get a kick out of you, okay? I kind of improvise, just a little bit.
I was lucky enough to be the oldest, so I got the piano lessons and ended up sticking with it all the way to 62 years. It was kind of difficult to leave that one teacher after 10 years because she was so good to me. She was so encouraging, and she was so a part of why I kept playing piano. And she charged $1.50 for a lesson, and she was so giving of her time for special recitals. But she didn't know anything about jazz. So to extricate myself from my dear classical teacher to get with someone who knew about jazz was quite delicate. Well, finally, in my senior year of high school, the teacher that I needed came to this area, and I had to sort of explain to my teacher of 10 years that she was just wonderful and that I'd love her forever, but there was some other form of studies that I needed to pursue. So it was difficult, but I finally got to a teacher who had big band experience. He had a master's degree from New England Conservatory. He knew classical music, jazz, all the answers. What I like about the piano is you don't have to carry it around. Okay. The drums and the bass viol, you really have to be dedicated to do that. I just show up at the last minute and sit down. When people start to look around and wonder where I am, I can just sit down and be ready.
My dad played guitar and plays guitar, and he also plays banjo. We got interested in banjo about the same time in the early 60s. You know, I saw an Eddie Peabody album. Eddie Peabody was the father of banjo players. The style that I play is the plectrum 4-string. And my father bought me an Eddie Peabody record. So I put that on and I went, wow, that's amazing. Because I was playing another type tenor banjo, and it just didn't have that same sound that Eddie Peabody was getting. Discovered that it's a different kind of banjo. It's a longer neck. So my dad, because of my enthusiasm, got interested also in banjo. And so we went out and bought banjos, and we went to, you know, me and Ed's Pizza Parlors and Shakey's Pizza Parlors and all these other different places, and just listening to different piano and banjo duos and things like that. And just thought, wow, this is just a kick, you know, this is really great. That, and there was a group called Kenny Ball, and they played Midnight in Moscow, and it was in the 60s, and it was very popular. Ring, ding, 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 ring, ding, ring, ding, ding. I think it's a happy instrument. You know, as Steve Martin said one time, you can't play a sad song on the banjo, you know, and it's kind of true. You know, you pick up the banjo and it puts a smile on your face, and I have kind of an affinity for smiling and, you know, happy things, so I think it goes along with my personality. You know, I like the happy sound. And I also, when I was a kid, the reason I liked the banjo, I saw one on an Eddie Peabody cover, and I also saw one in a music store hanging up. And if nothing else, I like the looks of it. I think it's a pretty instrument, you know, you just to hang it on the wall.
We moved to California in about 1938, I think. And that's where my older brother first played a Louis Armstrong record for me. And that did it. Eddie Erickson is, we should franchise Eddie. Buddy will say the same thing, he'll probably. Buddy always says you can take him anywhere. Eddie is a great, great musician, a great entertainer, and a dear friend.
My father was a drummer, and my mother was a dancer in her early years. And so I guess I come by it natural. I took up typing. I was very good at typing. I think it was the time. I used to like the time, you know, that it took the rhythm and everything. So I adapted to that. I was a very good typist, but I wanted music. My father really encouraged me the music more than anybody. My father gave me $20. Every time I went out and threatened to get a day gig, he'd say, "Don't do it. Here's $20 because you'll fall in that trap, that money trap." I always wanted to be a dancer, but my father said, no. He said, gypsies never make any money, so be a singer. I said, okay, I'll be a singer. I mean, I consider myself a storyteller. I'm not really a vocalist. I don't have long chops. I can't hold a note out real long. And, you know, operas is way away. I just tell a story. Time heals everything, Tuesday, Thursday. Time, it heals everything, April, August. Now if I'm patient, the break will mend, and one fine morning, I hope this hurt will end. Please make the moments fly, autumn, winter. You know I will forget you by next year, well, some year. Though it's hell that I'm going through, some Tuesday, Thursday, April, August, autumn, winter, next year, some year. Time heals everything. Time heals everything. Oh yeah. By loving you.
I see trees of green, red roses too. They bloom for me, and they bloom for you, and I say to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds so white, bright blessed day, dark sacred night, and I say to myself, what a wonderful world. Now the colors in the rainbow, oh so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people walking by. I see folks shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn more than we'll ever know. And I say to myself, what a wonderful world. I'd left my case down at River Inn where I work, and someone stole it. And I think they thought it was a video camera. And I was, you know, I had to tell everybody what was in it. There's a few of the things I didn't really want to tell. Well, there was, and I was telling Pat Duvall, and he said, well, we won't mention that. We won't mention that.
Pat Duvall's a sheriff.
Yeah, yeah, you got to have him. And so I called Pete, because I'd worked with Pete. And God, Pete, someone stole my horn. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have another one. Pete sent this out right away. Then the day after that, I got it back at River Inn. Everything was completely intact. So whoever stole it showed it to somebody, and the guy said, you fool. And he says, that belongs to Jackie over there. And it came back. It did come back to River Inn, and the guy said, we want to bring this back with no questions. And I said, fine. And they brought it back to the office at River Inn, and everything was just perfect. I love you. I hear babies cry.
Oh, babies cry.
I watch them grow.
I watch them grow big.
They'll learn more.
Oh, they're gonna learn a lot more
than we'll ever know.
Oh, I hope so.
And I say to myself,
what you gonna say, Jackie?
What a wonderful world. Wonderful world. And I say to myself, what a wonderful world.
I was born in Savannah, Georgia. My dad was a clarinet player, very, very fine, well, classical clarinetist. And I had a tune there called Riverboat Shuffle. It's an old jazz tune. And my sister was a swinger. She had a Victrola record of that Riverboat Shuffle. And I had me here down there trying to memorize that. And bam, Dad, I didn't see him. He come out the back end of the barn. And now not in the barnyard. He climbed up that hayloft and came out the back end. He can lay and bell me alongside the head. He knocked that music stand over, and it was quite a scene. He knocked the music stand over and grabbed that record and broke it. He says, "You learn to read before you improvise." And I never forgot that. I brought a band out here in California. 3 saxes and a piano player and a drummer. We had to audition in one of the hotels there in Hollywood. I forget the name of the hotel. We had all our horns. The 3 saxes, each one of us had a baritone and a tenor and a soprano and clarinet solo. And as we walked up, I heard him say to his wife, "Too much brass." Now, we didn't have a brass instrument on the bandstand, but I knew what he meant. I knew damn well he meant it's going to be too loud. We walked right up to a table and played just as soft as we can on those things. And we played that, and then we went into a tune with an ensemble, and Jimmy Thomas did one singing tune, and Ted's going like this. Knock it off. That's the way we got the job. But if I hadn't heard him say too much brass, we got up there and we never got that job. Thomas and I got in a beef one time and he decided to quit. So I told Ted, called up Ted again to send the piano player over. Oh, we had a rehearsal in the afternoon. And I walked by the place and Jack says, "Come on, you going in the rehearsal." I said, "Well, the piano player ain't there. Piano player's there. Floor show, you gotta rehearse." "Oh, piano player's there?" I walked in there and she was sitting up at the end of the bar, this gal. And I walked up to her and I said, "How long you been here?" She says, "About now." That's the way I met my wife.
Oh,
that was her.
Grace?
Yeah. "How long you been here?" She says, "About now." And she said, "I want to marry a saxophone player and have 10 kids. So if she outlined her program, she sure hit it right on the head.
Jake Stock and the Abalone Stompers are probably the greatest entertainers, music-wise, in the business. They could entertain you for a whole week without repeating themselves.
When I was about 11 years old, my dad used to take me to the Roseland Ballroom in Monterey to listen to Jake Stock. I want you to hear somebody that plays great. And every Saturday he and I'd go down there and I'd stand and watch. And Jake will always tell you, I used to see this little kid standing there watching him.
Jake and his wife, Grace, have been very instrumental in my music career because they told me you don't need to play a lot of notes in one measure. Just play tasty ones. If you're going to hit a note, do something with it. Just don't play blue, blue, blue. Hit a note and do it. Get the bellows and make it work. See? Just like, you know?
He always called me Coon, you know. He said, "Hey, Coon," he said, "you mind playing the tune that we played last set?" And I said, "Well, no." And he said, "Good." He says, "Which one?"
Jake Stock. Oh, gosh. Jake Stock, I can tell you the first day he arrived in Monterey, he and Gracie got in a little squabble. They were only married a short time. And in them days, it was very common for musicians to hop a freight train because we had a lot of trains coming here every hour. And I'm at my uncle's bar, Uncle Nick's bar, the banjoist. He had a little bar. And I was sitting there. I'm about 18 years old. And I'm having a Coke and my dad. And all of a sudden, somebody opens up a door and says, "Anybody in here want to hear a tune?" And it was Jake. We'd never seen him before. And he'd cross the railroad tracks right from here, on where this beach is here. And he'd walk 2 blocks down to Alvarado Street where our little bar walks in. And my dad picked up, he says, "Yeah, what do you got?" He says, "Well," he says, "I just came in from Bakersfield." He says, "My wife and I got into it." He says, "And man," he says, "I'm really thirsty." I said, "Dad says, what do you got? What do you want to talk about a tune?" He said, "Have a drink." So he got a drink, and he had a double shot of something. So he reaches in his pocket. In one pocket, he's got the barrel of the clarinet. The other's got then he's got the mouthpiece here, and he puts it together. And he says, "What would you like to hear?" My father says, "Do you know how to play Dirigo's Serenade?" He says, "You mean in French, de la mi, de la que?" Now, I don't pronounce it correctly, but Jake could pronounce the real title of that song. And he plays it. And he gets the clarinet and he goes. Now, this is 4:30 in the afternoon in a little bar. La, la, da, 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 la, da. And it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard in my life. My dad just fell in love with him. 2 hours later, we got him at my house. He's sharing my next bed in my bedroom. We've got pasta, and he stayed with us for 2 weeks until he made up with Grace. She came up, and we got him an apartment, and from then on, but oh, Jake, stories. You need a 6-hour tape to go for Jake.
Jake loves to play. I mean, he might be a brick mason and all of that, or he was a brick mason and all that, but Jake loves that horn.
He'd be playing along, and he'd do a little phrase, and you just, everybody in the band would, where did that come from? You know, it was like he was open channeling, you know, from the heavens.
He loved children. I mean, one of the little kids would come up to him, he'd say, God bless the little tykes, God bless the little tykes.
Well, I know that he had an impact here at the Jazz Festival. He did perform at the first festival in 1958. I think anytime you have an artist of his stature who's been able to be a force in his community for that amount of time is somebody to really acknowledge and be proud of.
One real clear memory I have of both Mike Murata and Jake was one night we stood out in downtown Monterey, the three of us, and for some reason we were standing on the street, like sort of in a parking space, not quite in the traffic, but almost, you know. And for some reason the three of us were standing there, and Jake started telling stories. And we were there till like 3 in the morning, and the cops kept driving by, and I kept thinking, you know, it's only because if it was me alone, you know, they would have told me to get out of there by now, but I'm standing there with Mike Murata and Jake, and it was like untouchable, you know. They were so well known.
Jake played all the reed instruments. He played the clarinet and the alto real good, but I loved the way he played the tenor saxophone. I thought he played better on the tenor than anything else. And his knowledge of the literature was just amazing. You know, I learned so many new songs being with him. New old songs, songs that I missed because I was a little bit younger than
Twilight Time. Just a taste.